Standings through day one with team events 1 and 3 look like this. Samurai team with 194, 14 points ahead of their countrymen from CrossFit Q21, a veteran of the regional round. Colombia Parceros, one of 2 Colombian teams in the mix. Tigran Armada, our top Mexican group, and then Team Moema, who was the second best finisher at the Big South, not the Big South, but the South Super Regional last year. They were the second best finisher to Big Friends. They are in 5th. 4 rounds of time here in event 2/3. It is our 3rd event, but the second 200-meter run, 25 synchro chest to bar pull-ups, and then the 10 worm clean and push presses with a 17-minute cap. Chase, let's talk about the differences of this and why it is where it is with our situation today.
Well, so we, had a little bit of a trucker strike, and none of the equipment could get in when they wanted them to get in. But the tricky thing here is that the worm casing, or the worm that you see there in the middle, came in, but not the filler. So they had to makeshift some fillers for these worms, and it's a little bit different than what they've been used to if they've been here before.
Lane assignments. There are 8 in this first heat. A couple of teams dropped off just before competition began. So we get a look at our teams right now who are trying to make a move and put themselves in a position to compete right now, very much on the outside looking in. As we get underway here in event number 2, the 200-meter run, tied up with the synchro chest to bar pull-up.
What's tricky here is that you have, with the rig that we have here, is this synchronized pull-ups opposite of each other. Now with this 200-meter run outside, it's going to be significantly shorter than what the other regionals had to do, also using an assault runner as those 400 meters on the runner. So the second pairing that gets to go out here, you don't even really need to run that fast. So if you're thinking about 200 meters not on an assault runner, is that you're just kind of basically, I would say, a light jog to where you could, a boring jog is all you really need to do. Because look, they're already back in, and I doubt any of these teams inside have more than 10 to 15 pull-ups done. Now, if they have more than that, I would say that was kind of a little too many too soon in the very beginning. What you want to do here is pace things out significantly on the chest to bar pull-ups, right? Doing 25 unbroken together in round 1 sounds great and looks cool, but this event doesn't really start until about round 3.
The way things work, and you can tell from the early going, it is concurrent, the 200-meter run and the 25 synchronized chest to bar pull-ups. The runner will run in and then tag the partner at the pull-ups when we get to the changeover. What's it like doing synchronized pull-ups facing your partner here as well, as opposed to doing the pull-ups next to your partner?
Honestly, I like it better because I can see directly ahead of the person in front of me, right? I don't need to have really close proximity to my partner side by side. It's a little bit more difficult. And I just like to add, as those are the greatest team jerseys I've ever seen in my entire life. So I found my new favorite team in heat number 1. But it's a lot easier because you don't have that side by side. You kind of feel the person next to us. So, and there's more room. That's the other benefit. Now, what happens after both pairs go through their run and their pull-ups and then they switch is that they have to do these worm clean to push presses. The tricky part here is kind of look at that worm. Look how sloppy that is side to side. Now, this is just a new challenge that these athletes have to take. Not many of these teams have ever had to use the worm before, so it's not like they're at a disadvantage of practice with something different. But what we do know is that the worms were made yesterday because all they had were the shells, but it does weigh the amount that it should. 358 pounds from front to back is what we were told. And then they asked what sections weighs, and they kept repeating. It's like Bill Belichick style, right? We're worried about the next game. Worried about it weighs 358 pounds. That's all we can tell you. That's all we're worried about. But it is a unique challenge in and of itself for teamwork.
It is as close to 170 in the 4 sections with the fill in between. But you talked about, sloppy in terms of how it is set up. It's it's full of basically sandbags. So there's a break in the bags, so it doesn't necessarily sit on your shoulder the way you want it to. And that is the interesting challenge. So as much as at this regional yesterday, they didn't have to use assault runners, and they don't have to use them right now, so maybe you would say, well, that's easier. They get to actually run. Well, in other regionals, you get to use a real worm, and here in Latin America, you have to figure out how to work with a worm that does not behave, because you might be holding it on your shoulder, and then the bag that's inside will slump forward, and it will drop off the front of your shoulder, and you have to reposition. So think about trying to lift an uncontrollable weight. You are trying to lift a very heavy, long water balloon.
Yeah, that's a good way. One way to put it. And when you think about this, is that the more, let's say it's a loose it is, it's not easy to control, which means you need to be in more control. All right. So if the worm, the way it's set up here, and it's the same for everybody, so it doesn't matter that it's hard to do. It's not like one team has more of an advantage than the other. But you have to be in more control, so you can't rush through this. And the other one is that someone could pull a little early, but it's so thick and connected from section to section that it doesn't really have a great effect on everybody. But here, you have to be in such, everyone has to be synced up so well. And that's kind of the point, right? The worm reveals teamwork. The worm reveals and exposes, the ability to work together as one unit. So yes, it's going to be harder for these teams. No, it's not a disadvantage between one or the other.
If you want to compare the worm that we're dealing with today and what you're looking for number-wise to worms of past, worm of 2017, worm of 2018, there's your difference.
The difference also is 2 extra sections from the previous year, because we have moved from 6-person teams to 4-person teams. And just like we've seen, Dave Castro announced the handstand walk obstacle, you saw all these makeshift obstacle courses with plates and plywood and everything in between. Same thing goes for the worms, is like trying to figure out a way to replicate this in the shortest and cheapest amount of time possible. So, just depending on what you guys are used to, the concept's the same, right? Move together on cue, stay together as one, even when things go bad. And that's more of the hardest part, when things go wrong.
That rack is stable, by the way. That was installed by Rogue after yesterday's competition. They brought it from CrossFit Crown here in Rio de Janeiro, with the main rig held up in the trucker strike here in Rio. And you can see the communication that this event takes. And they just got no repped again in the near side lane 9. That is CrossFit Condado. And it's trying to have the communication between 2 people to do a chest to bar pull-up at the same time. And now taking your time, taking your breath, getting up on there, and they're already out of sync, and there's another no rep.
Well, the problem is that are you guys even talking to yourself, like each other? One person's doing kipping pull-ups and the other person's doing butterfly pull-ups. It's borderline inexcusable. It's like, you guys are on the same team. You should have practiced this event prior to this. How are you guys making the mistake of which one's doing what? Same thing's happening. Look at that on the right side corner of this competition floor. One's doing kipping, one's doing butterfly. They still did the same thing. I don't understand what's going wrong here.
I'm trying to figure out the math of it, because I'm a pretty quick kipper, but I'm not keeping up with anybody doing butterfly.
There they go, finally.
In the wide shot, you'll see 2 worms way behind. Lanes 1 and 10 are unoccupied. So the worms all in the middle are your worms of consequence at this point, and your leader is Sharks MX, trying to get that worm off the ground right now.
And you can see, look at the front end of that bag, right? How this is going to change from heat to heat, from round to round, is that, you're just going to have to adapt as the worm changes from rep to rep. And Sharks MX, they're in first place in this heat. Behind them in lane number 4 is CrossFit Baru. And when it comes to the clean and push press overs, right, and they say I had to move the bag back, you have to stay within your 10-foot section. You also have to stay within that matted section as well. So if 1 foot goes out, it's going to be a no rep. You'll have to start over. And see on the right side, Sharks will drop it. And that's just a product of not starting in sync at the right time. Up and to their left in the black shirts.
Touch and go.
Touch and go, and that's very tricky. It can work well, but it can also be an utter disaster. And what you'll see some teams do is that they practice that going in, but it doesn't always work well on the competition floor. But if you look in the middle lane, 4 from the left, that touch and go tempo, they came in 4th in this group, but they moved really fast on the worm. So you can make a lot of time here if you're working together.
That is Silver Fern. You can tell by their shirts they are Brazilian. They are from Sao Paulo. Four rounds for time. Concurrently, the 200-meter run and 25 synchro chest to bar pull-ups, and then the 10 worm clean and push presses, with that worm advancing every 5 reps here in our first team test of the afternoon, morning, day. Cap of 17 minutes, 9:53 in. Silver Fern on the left of your screen. Sharks MX on the right. Their goal is a top 10 finish. They've got a long way to go to get there, competing in Heat 1 today. They said their second goal is don't get capped. So they've got 7 minutes to get through this.
Well, you clearly weren't watching the other regionals go if you're trying not to get capped in this event. This is predominantly a capped event. There is not a lot of teams that have been finishing team event number 2. And what that issue is just, it's not necessarily a chest to bar pull-ups. It is that clean and jerks or clean and push press side on the worm. And what I said before is that this event doesn't start till round 3. And the idea is that you kind of buy into this event for the first 2 rounds. So don't do big sets of pull-ups right away. Don't run very fast. It's 200 meters, so definitely don't run fast. You should just recover. You can run halfway there and walk the rest of the way, and your partner still won't be done doing chest to bar pull-ups. What you need to do is be ready for the worm. Everyone's so focused on 25 chest to bar pull-ups for both pairs every round and not putting enough importance on those 10 worm clean and jerks.
Salt Lake City CrossFit Black, of their 36 teams competing in the South Regional last week, was the record setter. Only 3 of 90 completed this event last week.
So, and that means that most teams that are in the top 10 are flirting with 4th round reps. And that's what I mean by round 3 is the most important round, because you want to give yourself enough time to get into the 4th round, or you just want to get to the 4th round. So when you think about it, pace out your first 2, and then when it comes to round 3, you tell your teammates when they get on the chest bar pull-ups, you do whatever it takes to get off this pull-up bar as fast as you can. I don't care what the rep scheme is, and I don't care how many times you have to break, but you wait for round 3 so we can get out of this round and into round number 4.
On the worm right now, from the top of your screen to the bottom, you have CrossFit Del Sur. Then in lane 5 is Proyecto CCC that just dropped the worm and it bent backward. And at the bottom of your screen is Condado. That's Silver Fern coming back in from the run. Your current leader right now, it is Silver Fern and Sharks MX out of Monterrey, Mexico, leading the way here in this 17-minute heat number 1 to kick off day 2. Del Sur on the left, Baracos on the right.
So now we're into round 3. And what's interesting, if you guys haven't seen, is that you can choose any pair you want at any time to do the particular part. So you can have 2 guys go initially, you can have 2 girls go, you can have a mixed pair, you can even change your mixed pair. And that's kind of the fun part here, is there's so many different ways. It's like you could have a teammate come off the worm and just be like, my grip is too smoked, to jump onto the pull-up bar right now, you can switch someone out. That's the fun part about this event and the different strategies you guys can have from round to round.
And if you need to do it in ones, do it in ones and drop off.
Exactly.
Ape programming.
Well, that's the thing that drives me crazy sometimes is like, sometimes people are too proud to break it into singles, and it's like, I don't care what you do as long as you're still doing work. You sitting there with your hands on your knees resting to do 5 reps does nothing for you if you can just keep getting reps done.
3 minutes left to go here in heat number 1.
That's what I want to see is 2 teams come to the worm at the same time leading this event. If you look at the event record, it was broken yesterday by CrossFit Mayhem Freedom, 15:33. We're only about 1 minute and 10 seconds away from that record, and we're still in the 3rd round.
That was 20 seconds faster than Salt Lake City Black from a week ago.
And it was very impressive because everything was smooth. Their chest to bar pulls were great. They stayed together. And just to give you an idea is that these teams will be lucky to get out of the 3rd round before Mayhem even finished this event.
You can see the difficulty of, I mean, look at the break in the worm. You can see the way it's almost twisting off like a balloon at the front, and just trying to clear that over the top of your head and deal with this oddly shaped worm as opposed to just a regular worm, which is tough enough on its own.
All right, well, so think about just distribution of weight as this event goes on. The ends are getting smaller. So what does that mean for the people in the middle? They're getting heavier. You do not have to put guy, girl in order with this specific worm. So what I hope they're starting to figure out is that as these events continue, you might have to put your strongest athletes in the middle of this worm and your weaker ones on the outside because the weight is so much lighter.
It's almost maybe worth your couple of seconds as well when you first approach the worm next time you get back to it to just play with it and try to, pick it up in a different spot and remove the weight and then go do it.
What you could do is you could take 2 people in the middle and kind of lift it up a little bit so it redistributes the sand towards the ends. But to be honest, just in terms of a unique challenge, part of this too, it's not like any of these teams has a fully outfitted rogue worm in their affiliates. If they do, they're lucky. Not many of them have because they don't even make a 4-person worm yet. You would have had to have the 6-person worm and change it to get some practice. So it's not like any of these teams are at a disadvantage because this is too hard because everyone's doing it, but it is interesting to see because this thing changes from rep to rep basically every time you drop it.
Silver Fern struggling a little bit to get that thing to go.
Now you think about a 17-minute cap with 30 seconds left, it all comes down to these final 2 pairs to do as many reps they possibly can to get as, minimize that cap number that you're going to have.
I stand corrected. That's Baracos struggling here with the worm to try to get it to go. Silver Fern's back at the ring. 2 Brazilian teams, both sporting the home country colors. Caught me off guard for a second. 10 seconds to cap here in Heat 1. And Silver Fern going to try to get itself in some good graces here. No rep on that last pull-up to try to set a solid tempo heading into today's 2nd event and try to make a move in the standings, starting from behind on day 2.
All right, now take a look at this touch and go for the worm, and it worked out very well for them in the beginning. Like I said, it can work great when it does. It can be devastating if it doesn't, so you got to be able to adapt. And what's nice here is that 200-meter course versus the 400-meter assault runner that we've seen in other regionals. And just staying together from round 1 to round 2, as I said, it's the magic of round 3 that's going to separate the best from the worst in this event.
Check the standings in team competition through 2 events yesterday. Samurai team number 1, a 14-point lead over their Argentinian mates out of CrossFit Q21. There is some room in there to move.
Well, you got 3 teams in the mix currently after 2 events for that top spot. But if you look at the teams that are only about 40 to 50 points out of that top position, so you'd look at 6th place Box Pro team, 50 points out of 1st place. With a worm event, something like this, of which we have 2 of today, a lot of things can change.
Be interesting to see if anyone moves into this leaderboard as well from the results in heats 1 and 2. This is the work. 200-meter run concurrent with 25 synchronized chest to bar pull-ups, 4 rounds for time, and then 10 worm clean and push presses, 4 rounds for time. It's the run and the chest to bar, then the worm, then start over again with the run and the chest to bar, and then the worm. Take a look at the lane assignments. These are our leaders, the top 10 teams in this final heat. The Champions League in lane 1 out of Argentina, one of 4 Argentine teams in here. 3 teams from Mexico, 2 teams from Brazil, and then the Colombia Parceros, one of 2 Colombian teams and the only 8 Colombian athletes at this Latin American regional.
And your top 3 will be in the middle in lanes 4, 5, and 6, with Samurai team in that 1st place position in lane number 5. So it's good for them because they're side by side by side.
There is Samurai team. While we were watching everyone else jump out to a big lead in event 1 yesterday and then struggle to get over the handstand walk obstacle, Samurai just very quietly went about their business and dominated to get themselves into that 1st place position. So again, synchronized chest to bar concurrent with a 200-meter run, of which every 10 meters counts as 1 rep.
You know, and I'm watching a lot of these teams rip off huge sets of chest to bar pull-ups in the top right corner of your screen. Some about 15 reps, maybe a 15-10, and that'll work if that's the game you guys can play, right? If your partners are all just monsters on the pull-up bar for 4 total rounds, then go for it. But if you're not, there's no need to pretend you're something you're not, right? If you're going 15-10 or you do 25 right off the bat, yeah, that's great, but you still have 3 more rounds of this. There's 100 total synchronized chest to bar pull-ups with your partner for this particular event. And what you can't do is start too fast. I said in the previous heats is that the event starts in round number 3. That's where people are only getting through or just getting 2 so far in this regional. But if you want to be the best, you got to save yourself for the last 2 rounds, not spend it all in the first 2.
It is chest to the bar. However you get it there is up to you. We have seen people kip, we have seen people butterfly, we have seen teams do both at the same time and try to make it work.
And right now, everybody's comfortably doing butterfly pull-ups on the right side of your screen. It's just that sweeping pull-up motion as opposed to that kip in, kip out, more of that metronome style of pull-up. And it all looks good in round 1. It's like, okay, we have a 200-meter run instead of 400-meter on the assault runner. That's great. We have to do 25 chest to bar pull-ups each, no problem.
And here's Team Moema, who was the first to the handstand walk obstacle in team event number 1 yesterday, the first to the worm here in team event number 3 today, although very quickly behind them. Samurai team on it, Q21 is on it. Everybody coming to the worm like the floodgates opened.
Yeah, but Moema just had such a hard first rep. There's no communication. One person's pulling than everybody else. Are we doing touch and go? Are we breaking this up side to side? So the communication part, this is why I said is that just because you're sitting in first today on the leaderboard after yesterday, these worm events require so much unity, so much teamwork and communication, is that if you don't have that as a team, you will not make it through day number 2 because we have 2 events that require this worm today.
Let's talk about the worm a little bit too in terms of its construction. You look at the front of these worms and you have kind of a dead fish section. What we know is that front to back, the worm weighs what the worm should weigh, 358 pounds. But because of the truck strike here in Brazil, only the worm skins arrived at the arena. The fill did not. So they are filled with essentially sandbags, which are not necessarily even. You just see Q21 catch a no rep on the right of your screen. And it is hard at times to make sure that you catch the sandbag at the right spot and they don't break awkwardly. As you get a look at Team Parceros, the Colombian group. For more on them, let's go down to Teffy.
I was talking to Team Colombia Parceros early this morning. They're not only excited, but they're determined to make that shot to the games. They've been struggling with getting into South Regionals for 2 years with this team. Now that they have the experience, are expecting some great things right here in this arena. They're also excited to be competing with their fellow Latin American crew. They want to see where they stagger, and they're doing an amazing job of communicating, and they're just hustling to get there. Their recovery has been on point. Now they're better with their nutrition, so we're hoping to see great things from them. Can't wait.
Taffy, thank you. A previous regional team in the Parceros, and we talked about it yesterday. They represent Colombia. They are from a small town in Colombia, 15 square kilometers, faster CrossFit in Sabaneta, one of the smaller municipalities. They want to fly their nation's flag at an event like this.
And as they do that, Q21 currently in the lead so far for this event. Team Moema, who was first to the worm, was one of the bottom 5 teams out of it. Actually, they're still on the worm now that I look on the floor.
Yep.
I thought they'd already gone through, and so
they are 5th.
They did 2 to 3 touch and go reps to start it off. That's only 10 total. So what has been happening since rep 1 and not even getting to rep 10 yet?
And you can see, as Moema is picking up the worm, the awkwardness of it and trying to find your grip on the sandbags that are inside. Sometimes you're gripping weight, sometimes you're gripping empty worm as the bag that's inside may flop over or behind your shoulder. It's not a constant, consistent fill that's in there, and that is the challenge you deal with today. You don't have to run on assault runners, but good luck picking this thing up. There's Q21 on the synchro chest to bar.
And this will be their second pair, so their first pair is already through their 25 chest to bar pull-ups. This will be their second, so they still have that edge on the other teams around them as Q21 on the left part of your screen off to their 200-meter jog. And what's nice about this is with that 200 meters outside is, 1, it's not on an assault runner. 2, it's half the distance. So the amount of rest these pairs are getting on the runs is going to significantly help the rest of this event. And what you kind of want to see is that your athletes that are less conditioned should go to the pull-up bar first every round. And the reason that is because they're going to get a massive break from pull-ups to the worm. And that's what you want. You want rest between when you guys do your synchro pull-ups and runs before you get to those 10 clean and push presses. Not the other way around, because you're going to break up chest to bar pull-ups anyway, so you're going to get some rest there kind of established, but that is the pacing you want to see. And they were done in a good amount of time where the pull-ups were done and they came in from the run.
The Parceros just beat Q21 to the worm. They've gotten it up, and with the push press, have their first rep. There's Q21 just about a half rep behind them, and there are the differences in specifications. What you don't see there is there are 4 people picking up this worm as opposed to 6 that were part of team competition in 2017. So we hack off a little about less than 100 pounds.
Yeah, and the one we have specifically here weighs the same amount, but in terms of sections, and you can see the front part of your screen, is that look at the front part of that bag. Look at that split in the middle. That makes things so awkward to pick up. It's, you know, like you said, it's, it's a good description, is this kind of a really long water balloon where there's nothing even. Things shift as you pull it off the ground. It shifts as you go over your head. And every time you drop it, it's almost like it's a brand new bag every time you pick it off the ground. So not only do you have to adapt with the worm that you were given, but you're going to have to adapt every rep that you do.
You have to advance the worm every 5 reps as well. So if you start to find some kind of rhythm, you get 5 in, you got to move. Q21 starting to struggle a little bit with Samurai next to them. And then next to Samurai on the far side of your screen are the Parceros. Those are your 3 leaders in the team competition. Those are your 3 leaders in this heat with 9 minutes left to go. 100 points up for grabs. Clearly, there are less than 100 points separating 1 through 5. So, Now, granted, everyone gets points, so it's not as clean cut as that, but there's a lot of moving and shaking that can happen from Samurai down to Moema.
Well, then look at Team Colombia, because they are advancing into their third round ahead of Samurai and Q21. They're over in lane number 4 and already out the door.
And Q21's worm, they just dropped it, and they're a full 5-rep length back. The Colombia Parceros. By the way, it means partners, literal translation, although Teffy told us it means more like bros.
Bros.
Like, hey partner, what's up,
like
man?
Bros.
Yeah.
3 teams sitting ahead of Q21. Q21, if you look at the top right part of your screen in the center of the competition floor, just advancing their worm from round 2 to round 3. So your second place team, or third place team, coming in just a few points away from Team Samurai. But what's important is that Team Colombia, who's sitting in first, this is a good opportunity for them to get closer to Samurai, who's holding on to that first position, or at least leapfrog Q21 for that second place position.
The double female and double male on the run and pull-ups here, and you mentioned it in Heat 1. You can trade, mix, and match these combinations of who is running together and who is pulling up together to start and between rounds, whatever works for you, as long as you have 2 people doing these exercises concurrently and, as far as the pull-ups are concerned, in sync.
Well, I'll tell you what, the female pair for Team Colombia on their 200-meter run absolutely crushed that third round of synchronized chest-to-bar pull-ups. And as I said, the third round is the most important round. You would say the fourth round is, but again, we had a handful of teams finish this event last weekend, and even yesterday, because yesterday the other regionals did the team events in order because they had the equipment. Here, we're doing it on day number 2. But the third round is the most important, to get through it and then into the fourth as quickly as you can.
I don't know what this is worth, but their run is in sync too. They have been left, right, both of them that entire 200 meters.
I mean, it's something to say for being in sync as a team, and this is very impressive to see how quickly these guys are getting through these chest-to-bar pull-up sections. And like I said before, if you're great at pull-ups, then knock them out. 2 sets, 3 sets, 1 set. And if you can hang on to that pace through the third round, then good for your team. So Team Colombia, this is shaping out to be very, very good for them.
They were about a half rep ahead when they got to the worm the last time. Q21 is taking a breather right now on the pull-ups. They've been passed by Samurai as well. So those are your 2 leaders. Parceros on the left, Samurai on the right. There is Q21.
Q21 lost a lot of time on those last clean and push presses, so the worm seems to be causing them a lot of trouble.
And they just switched off, so they are a full 25 pull-ups back right now.
And that's what can happen, right? You're either good at pull-ups or you're not good at pull-ups. If you're not, don't pretend to be in the first 2 rounds. You're just going to make yourself worse in round number 3. Parceros on the left are crushing the chest-to-bar pull-ups. 21 is done, so their pair came in and we're just kind of resting and waiting for their team. But you got 3 teams now ahead of Q21 who's just arriving to their worm.
I'll catch myself on that. Tigran Armada is next to them in the same color shirt. They were the ones that just switched off. So Q21 now does get to the worm. However, they are at least 5 reps back of Samurai and Parceros, who have already jumped in front. You can see Q21 in the back communicating for what is their second clean and press overhead.
Now Tigran Armada in lane number 7.
Chance to finish here, though.
There
Maybe.
is time, right? If you're looking at the average splits, that's about 4:20 around to get to that 13-minute mark. So they're going to have to go faster than they've been. So they're not going to finish this event per se unless they've been saving it, right? A negative split. Pace it out a little bit in the first 2 rounds. bring it home in the last 2 rounds. But it is going to come down. These teams can finish the pull-ups if they've been doing what they've been doing, and we're going to see how far are they going to be able to get to the worm in the 4th and final round.
And you can see checking behind to try to find your partner on the run. You don't have to run together, but there is something to be said for the camaraderie of having your partner with you on the run and pacing yourself as long as you're not losing time in the end because of it.
And as you look at the bottom left part of your screen, kind of his hand behind her back, cheering her on to get her to the finish. What's nice is that it is a 200-meter run, so you do have time. You don't have to run terribly quick. However, unless you're going against Team Colombia, who has just absolutely demolished the first 3 rounds.
He's literally playing tugboat here.
And sometimes that's what it takes, and that's what you want to see between teammates and partners. When one struggles, the other one lifts them up. That's the whole part about being a team. Not everybody has to have their A game, but as long as someone is there to help you get through. Now, what is going to have to happen is that you're not going to be able to do the pull-ups for your partner. They're going to have to be there with you.
Marcela Peña-Salas and Maria Clara Ceballos, the 2 female competitors for the Parceros. Jonathan Restrepo, Alejandro Arcia are the 2 male competitors right now for your leader. Now you're going to look at Marcela and Maria.
And another great section of chest-to-bar pull-ups for Team Colombia. And what we saw on the right side of your screen is that Team Samurai, their first pair is struggling to get synced. They're in the center lane. Lane number 5, working through. They just finished. You can see on the right top of your screen, just making the switch. So they're about 45 seconds behind Team Colombia for second. Now, what is good is that Colombia is about, they're 16 points away. So if they can get first and second, they're only going to yield 6 points. But that is one step closer that Team Colombia can get to that top position.
The teams on their 4th round right now are Parceros, Samurai, Q21, Armada out of Tigran in Argentina. And then all the way down in lane 9, Blue Wave has done a good job very quietly to be in that front grouping. Box Pro in lane 8 is now on to their final set. With 1 minute left, the Parceros are clearly in front, the only one moving the worm in this final set.
Lane number 5 is Team Samurai. They have finished their chest to bar, so they were slow on the run, but they absolutely just knocked it out of the park on the chest to bar pull-ups. Team Colombia in the center part of your screen, only 3 reps in. Here comes Samurai. Tigran is already to the worm as well. So like I said, with 30 seconds left, it's going to be a race on the worm as Colombia advances.
5 reps left with now 20 seconds. Can the Parceros finish? It's going to be darn tough. Here's their second. Now with 12 seconds, they will get capped, but they will do a ton of work in this event. A no rep on Samurai with 3 seconds left. There's a third clean and press for the Parceros. They came 2 reps shy of finishing.
And they did it all with fantastic communication and synchronized chest-to-bar pull-ups, especially on the women's side. That was very impressive. So Colombia getting a first-place finish in this event. Tigran moved up into second, so that's 12 points they just gained on first place.
Let's take a look at how it happened with the Parceros. Early, they got on the worm, and that's where they separated.
And they kind of separate themselves slowly, and that's what I was talking about I wanted to see a team do, is not come out too fast. The run short, there's a lot of time to recover. You don't have to run very fast. But on the left side in lane number 4, just look at those chest-to-bar pull-ups on the men's side, staying together, big sets, and at the end, just 5 reps ahead of the rest of the field, comfortably in first place, finishing first overall in this event. That is a very good way to start day number 2, and that should build a lot of confidence in the worm going into the final event today.
The Parceros trying to make some ground up on Samurai, now halfway through the team competition here in 2018 with 1 spot to the games on the line. No pressure. The Colombia Parceros, one of 2 Colombia teams here. They both want to represent their nation. The Parceros are the ones right now locked into it. Coming into the event, the standings looked as such. Samurai plus 14. The Parceros will now have 278 points. And we'll have to do the math to figure out the rest of where everything falls in.
They're going to end up being 2 points behind Team Samurai as there are 16 coming in, or 4 points behind them. So it's going to be a very tight race now.
All right, Tefi has the Colombian Parceros.
Parceros, an amazing job. Congratulations.
Gracias, arriba Latinoamérica.
Yeah, that is correct. Let's go Latin America. So you guys were a little bit worried about this RIT section going into the pull-ups, but you guys nailed it. How you made that happen?
Lo hemos hecho entrenando mucho. Con nuestro equipo siempre hemos entrenado muy coordinados. Nos encantan las chest to bar, nos encanta la gimnasia, así que era nuestro wood.
Chest to bars are their favorite thing to do, so now it was this workout that made them shine. How are you expecting next workout to do?
Ganárnoslo igual.
Esperamos quedar de primero. Winning, there's only one place, one spot for the games, and you're on your way to it. Great job, guys.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you, Tefi. The Colombia Parceros, there is no chest to bar for the rest of the day, but they will have the worm coming back in team event number 4. Games.crossfit.com has your full leaderboard, games information, and more. Stick with us from Rio. Team event number 4 is next. in this heat number 2. Team Venezuela, the lone representatives of their country here at the regional. They are in lane 1. Toluca out of Argentina rounds things out in lane 9. CFP9 Rio is the hometown team, one of 3 Brazilian teams in this heat. And you might see some people make some moves, try to get in to heat 3 as we work into the final day tomorrow.
Well, this is their final opportunity to get into the final heat. The top 10 teams will always be in the 3rd and final heat. And the way things have gone this morning is we had teams in heat 1 and heat 2 that had a top 5, top 10 finish that could vault them up. Because if you look at the leaderboard at the top, you have 3 teams kind of pulling away to the rest of the field. But from 4th down to 12th, it's very tight points to get into that 10th position or top 10 position for that final heat.
This is the fastest team event we've seen so far today. More of a sprint than the other ones, just in terms of the fact that it is a 12-minute cap versus a 17-minute cap.
And this is a repeat event of the regional event we had last year. Same rep scheme, 40 thrusters, burpees, 30 thrusters and burpees. Now that was with the 6-person worm and worm facing burpees. Now they get to go laterally, which changes the landscape of the burpee just a little bit, but you also have to navigate your way between your partners because you have this offsetted worm on each side. Now the worm's different, it's still the same weight as we had in previous regional events last weekend, but the way it's shaped, you can just kind of look down the line and see that, you know, they did the best they could to make do with what they had. It's the same weight, but it's a lot more challenging to navigate with the way it's constructed.
You can see the struggle, particularly in the front. There's 2 ways that the worm has worked in the front. One, where the sandbags that are in there as kind of makeshift filler breaks behind one sandbag, and you've kind of got that sag on your shoulder. To your left, you see the struggle of the sand kind of being on your shoulder and not having a lot of worm to work with at the front of it.
And what this ends up being is just a sectionless sandbag. So the way it kind of moves and changes as reps continue. Now, I will say for the thrusters that after a few reps, it tends to kind of pack in your favor, where it'll stick to your shoulder just a little bit better by the way you go from side to side. But what these teams need to realize is that, you know, pacing it a little bit in the first set of 40 is hard to do when you come out on the floor for the second time trying to get into the top 10, this being the second heat of 3. But you need to pace yourself out early in that first set of 40 thrusters. Just keep moving on burpees. Don't slow down too much. But it's the round of 30. The round of 30 is where it's going to change everything. It's kind of what team wants it more in that set of 30 thrusters and burpees.
This worm advances every 20 reps, and then you begin the burpees. And our first team to the burpees is in lane 5. That's Comarca team. They are out of Mexico. Lane 7, team 502. And in lane 6, CFP9 Rio. Also to the near side in lane 10, you see work on the burpees. Pardon, lane 10, there is no lane, or pardon, lane 9, there is no lane 10. With Team Toluca, they are the furthest team to the right.
Now in these burpees, you have that lateral style, those offset. Different than last year, we had the all be on one side facing it. You see a no rep. And what they need to do is they all have to establish a bottom position with their chests and thighs on the ground before they can move. When they move, they don't have to move together. The only synchro that they need is being down on the ground. And so what you're going to have is usually the person in the back calling over. The other athlete's jobs, or their job should be, is to get to the ground as quickly as they can and wait for the call. You have to react to the call, not anticipate the call. If you're reacting, you're waiting for go. If you're anticipating, that's when teams can kind of get ahead of each other. When one person pops up before the others, that's when you're going to see a no rep.
And a no rep, the full team has to redo the burpee as well. So it's one of those things where, remember when you were on a sports team growing up and the one guy would mess up and everyone has to run?
Except for that guy?
Yeah.
That's the way you do it.
CFP9 Rio is in front in lane 6. They are the hometown team out of Rio de Janeiro. They are led by Rachel Valoia, the 15th fittest woman in Brazil after the Open. "28 years of age, and as we talked about yesterday from the Brent Fikowski School of, is a tax lawyer and CrossFit athlete. Whether or not she can drink water out of a bottle while running successfully, still yet to be determined. Almost halfway into this 12-minute cap event.
Now here in the second half of 40 burpees as they advance every 20, you just want to make sure is that everybody's on the same page. No reps are costly in terms of time loss, not necessarily energy. A burpee's a burpee, right? You lay on the ground, you hop over the worm. They're not hard, they just suck. That's the worst part about the burpee. They're just not any fun. They get you more fatigued, but the pace at which you should go isn't one where you're going to burn yourself out. Because of what you have next, you started with 40 thrusters and 40 burpees over the worm. You're going into 30. That is not enough of a drop-off to push the beginning part of this event, thinking you have, say, half the reps to go. With a number like 30, that is just enough that I say temper your intensity in the first half of this event. And as you move into the second half of thrusters, as Team 4L does, is that you want to make sure is that you're together. Together and succinct. Maybe sets of 10, put the worm down, collect yourselves, pick it back up. It's when people start to rush that they get out of sync, and then they do what? They panic. And when you panic, you're just going to do a lot of standing around, and there's going to be a lot of confusion. So take your time on the 30 thrusters, and then on the last set of burpees is when you bring it home.
Team 4L right now is your new leader. They're at the top of the screen. CFP9 Rio just chasing them, and there's a no rep, and they had to drop the burpee and pick it back up. Unable to complete in the second part of the four-person team.
And I'll be honest, I think it's a premature no rep for that judge, is because as long as everyone's below parallel at the same time before they come back up, that's okay. Some people are going to squat below parallel below others, and as long as they don't come up before they are, and that's when there's a no rep. So I think sometimes it looks one way and it's actually another. So I think a little wait and pause before letting the whole team get below parallel at the same time before they come up on that.
Team 4L is a great story as well. Qualified for regionals last year. The super regional in the South that also included the Latin American nations had visa issues and could not go. So happy to be able to fulfill the dream of getting to regionals here this year, Team 4L. When you talk about CrossFit and constant growth and improvement, one of their athletes, Magdalena Gropo, always a scaled athlete. She came to the box with Team 4L, CrossFit 4L in Buenos Aires, and her coaches said, look, you're a regionals athlete, there's no reason you shouldn't be. And this year, with the team, she's finally achieved that. The event record for reference. Now this was done yesterday across the other, that was the last regional. This is today. I'm all out of sorts. Rio de Janeiro has gotten me tongue-tied. Don't Stop from team event number 4 last week, South Regional in 8:41.
And you look at that 8:41, if you look at the top left part of your screen, we are only 20 seconds away from that event record. Now what I said about pacing things out, especially on the thrusters and burpees, if you're at the level of athletes and caliber that Team Don't Stop was, you do exactly what your team name says, and that is Don't Stop. And they did that. They're just flying through thrusters and burpees. And the trick here is once you get to the last set of 30 burpees, this is where you have to push. And it's not necessarily speed, but that time in between burpees. Get over, get down, and then get moving. It's only burpees. I think some people don't like me saying that, but you can always do a burpee. I think that's the worst part of them, is that it doesn't matter how tired you are, barring your arms are broken at the bone, is that get on the ground, get over your worm. Look, it's gonna hurt. It sucks, it hurts, but you can keep going, and that's where you see the teams that have the gutsiest athlete make the biggest impact.
Team 4L has fallen behind of CFP Rio. They are both, however, on their last grouping of burpees. That's why you see the shrapnel of waist belts strewn across around them. Don't need a weight belt to do a burpee. We're about to hit the 10-minute cap. Last week, 8 teams of the 89 completed this event in under 10 minutes. The average finish time was about 10 and a half.
Now I know in the top part third lane, 4L was well behind CFP9, but their burpee speed is catching up to them. So 15 reps, advanced to room forward. They're both done at the same time.
CFP9 Rio is fired up too. They finished those burpees and picked that thing up. Advance the worm. 15 reps down, 15 to go with 1:15 before the time cap.
Look how fast 4L is working at the top part of the lane. P9 is starting to pick up the pace just a little bit as they saw 4L moving, but 4L made up a lot of time on them in the first set of 15.
And watch in the back of CFP9, the eyes come up after every burpee to check the clock, but they're racing each other, not the time cap right now. 50 seconds between CFP9 and 4L, way ahead of the pack here in Heat 2. 40 seconds until the cap, and CFP9 cruising. They thought they had another burpee. They did one extra before everyone popped up and got out of Dodge. 4L still trying to get in under 12 minutes. Coming down the home stretch. With the hand in the air, they're done. 2 finishers, and that's what we will wind up with. Toluca in lane 9, along with lane 4, Team PY, finished 3rd and 4th in this second heat. But a pair of finishers in 4L out of Argentina and CFP9 Rio out of here in Rio de Janeiro. It's good when it comes down to the wire, and it does.
A lot of back and forth in the last section of this. CFP9 in the middle lane in the black and blue as they advance forward, the same with 4L into the final set of 15 burpees. 4L had pulled ahead or caught up, but in the final 5 burpees, CrossFit P9 just in sync and fast together, pulls ahead and gets this heat win. It was a great finish for CrossFit P9.
The standings after 3 events amongst the teams. Samurai came into the day in first place. They are still, but the lead is 5. The lead is 4. Math was always questionable. CrossFit Q21, a little bit more distant and lost ground in event number 2 to start off the morning.
Yes, and you know, it's a 100-point difference with CrossFit P9 sitting in 8th, may set themselves up well coming into this 4th event, but a repeat event on the team side. This is the first time we've seen a repeat team event come up since 2013 and 2011. We had that deadlift box jump workout, but the event here, 40s and 30s, top 10 teams, at least after yesterday. It's changed a little bit after that 3rd event.
4, 5, and 6, there were your leaders to begin Saturday. Samurai team in lane 5, Parceros and Q21 behind them. And Q21 looking for a really good 4th event. They struggled in the 3rd event, event 2, trying to make up the ground that they lost.
This event is won towards the end in the round of 30s. You don't want to do is just pace this out just a little bit. Now, if you can handle high volume squats, good, but you don't need to overstress yourself too soon. But to see a lot of these teams is just flying out of the gates in the first set of 10, 20 reps. They're going to have to advance it after 20. understand is that you have a long way to go. Don't let the adrenaline in the moment take you out of a smart game plan.
You're looking at the W pack right now. Team out of Mexico just cruising. 40 worm thrusters. You advance the worm every 20 reps, followed by 40 worm burpees. Move every 20 reps, followed by 30 worm thrusters. Move every 15 reps, and 30 burpees over the worm, moving every 15 reps. Now that worm front to back weighs as close as possible to 358 pounds with the makeshift filler today because all we had was the skins. 170, 170 are the sections. Your hands must be under the weighted sections, not under the red in-betweens.
And I like Team Colombia were the first ones to advance out of the set of 20 and into their second round. They have yet to put the worm down once since we started, just below them. In lane number 5, we saw Samurai Team take a break, drop the worm. I don't have a problem with that. It's good to kind of just get it off your body and rest. But what I like Team Colombia doing is you can see one athlete in the back on the left side of your screen is off center. So they got a little no rep and off pace, but Team Colombia still a pretty decent start, picking up where they left off in event 3 earlier this morning. See some miscommunication on the left side of your screen, and that's what happens. So look for Samurai to maybe move up ahead of them. They're in the center part of the screen with Q21, who had a rough event this morning, sitting in that third place position.
And there are the Paceros. Samurai advancing further first. Now Q21 behind, and let's hit the deck. Samurai, the first to get to a burpee. Communication is key in a situation like this. The burpees dictated by the person in the back. The worm, the communication is big too, in terms of everyone go down, everyone come up, lift that thing up and move it over to the shoulder, but it seems simple. You've got to be on the same page. It is not that simple.
It does. It seems simple here is, you can just talk to each other. Hey, we all squat together. But what, you don't see or hear, watching from home is how loud it is on the competition floor. The music is blaring. You have floor PA announcers screaming into the microphones, and then you're side by side with 10 other teams calling the same thing. So communication is key for one. Being able just to communicate, period, is another.
You told me you guys have practiced at CrossFit Big D with crowd noise.
Yeah, so what we did is that when we were practicing the worm, I had the team, sit in the middle of the gym, and then we pumped in, you just go on YouTube and Google crowd noise, the loudest crowd noise we could possibly do just to simulate what it's like to be in that situation and what the calls could be. So, what happens in the gym is completely different what happens on the competition floor.
And in Brazilian spirit, Chase actually stood there with a vuvuzela as well. 12-minute time cap. We did have 2 teams finish in heat number 2. CrossFit 4L, CrossFit CFP9, the hometown team from Rio.
Q21 on the right side of your screen. Judge's first hands in the air indicating they have 5 reps left to go. Samurai just to the left, still keeping in front of them, but what 21 needs to do is to kind of make up. They didn't have a bad event per se earlier this morning, but they didn't finish where they wanted to, losing that second place position and points on Team Samurai, who's in the center part of your screen.
Samurai team has been to the regionals before in 2015. Their goal this time, to podium and possibly win. Well, right now they're in good shape. They just have to keep doing what they're doing. More than a quarter of the way through this 12-minute time cap team event 4.
Like I said, this round of 40 is a buy-in to the second half of this event, where you have 30 and 30. You're only dropping 10 reps from the first half to the second half. That's what makes this event so devastating physically, because there really is not enough of a drop-off to be able to push the pace early and hang on towards the end.
4 teams are on their set of burpees here. They're joined by Team Moema, who is just off the screen in the standings. Right now, though, you're all chasing Samurai team. And what is different about what you're looking at right now is the red line location. We're in Latin America. One team goes to the games. Usually we'd show you that graphic, and those are the 5 teams going to the games. No dice. You've got ground to make up. At the bottom of the screen, we have another team on to their second round of burpees. You break these things up 20 at a time, advancing the worm in between.
Here's where the event starts to get fun, maybe from a spectator's side. This is where it starts to get tough as an athlete. 30 thrusters with the worm. Now the men switched positions. I do like that. I will say though, what's nice about this one is that look at all the breaks in that, it's not a straight worm, and when you don't have it sectioned off, each athlete kind of carries his or her own weight on their shoulders. In the other one, it's more rigid. So that tall guy in the middle would take more weight. He's not going to take it now, so it's easy to switch athletes out from side to side for this one than it is on the other.
It's actually one of the more evenly weighted of all of the worms we've seen so far.
So they'll advance forward every 15 reps as opposed to the 20 and 20 they did in the set of 40. So they've got at least 12 more to go as they just put it down.
Samurai team has Juan Uidobro in the front. Sol Lupo is their second male competitor who was in the front, had switched to the back as they continue to rotate and change the pressure on each of their shoulders. The taller Lupo has now gone back to the front as they pick the worm up and get back to work. Event number 4. Lupo in the front, 24 years old.
We've already gone through 40 worm thrusters and 40 worm burpees. Samurai in the center lane is trying to finish up their last set in the round of 30. And then it's going to come down to the burpees. We saw a tight race at the end in the previous heat between 4L and P9. Now we have 4 teams moving up in the top, but Samurai is now going to be moving to the burpees. And if you're sitting in that first place position, this is the spot that you want to be in. They have less than 4 minutes to try to get that time set in the previous heat.
Uidobro, Scarafia, Ortuno, and Lupo. The 4 for Team Samurai, who are on their final 30 burpees. And now here comes Q21, who had ground it needed to make up.
And now this might start being a problem, is that look at the first female athlete trying to get over the worm. And that is a lot of time bleeding out, and the time to beat just underneath that 12-minute cap in the previous heat. So what you're looking at is basically, if you can finish this event, that's good enough for a top 3, if not 2 finish, if you're close to the ones in the previous heat before this. Q21 in the 4 part of your screen. What I like about them and what they showed in the assault bike deadlift event is that they can hurt. They can hurt side by side, they can hurt together. So don't be surprised to see Q21 just below Samurai to move ahead of them after the first set of 15.
The Parceros are now on their burpees. So is Team Moema as well. Q21 and Samurai has company, but Samurai has just 15 burpees remaining. Is there enough gas in the tank with 2:20 left on the timer? Moema is cranking out the burpees, so are Parceros, the team from Colombia who already pocketed an event win in team event number 2 this morning. And look at Q21 Stammer trying to move that worm, armless in the front, now on to their final 15 burpees.
They're about
2 minutes to go.
6 reps behind Samurai, who's just above them, and it seems like their athlete has figured out that we have to start moving. She has picked up the pace for Team Samurai. Look at that. What have you been doing for the first 20 reps?
Well, there she just got caught in a no rep. Everyone will have to hit the deck again, pop back up. She was a little bit slow, but right back into her rhythm. And Samurai's done. The Argentinian flag just thrown down onto the competition floor. The Samurai hit the fence hard and hit the ground to recover with 1:15 to go. Now the Parceros are on to their final 15 burpees. Here comes Moema with 1:08 to go. Movers and shakers trying to go up the leaderboard, but Samurai right now has helped strengthen its lead. Who else can close the gap? Here comes Q21. That'll be a much needed finish. Parceros trying to preserve the work done this morning.
Great finish for Q21. They needed it after this morning. They had fell out about 20 points from Samurai. But you see Team Colombia, who is just 4 points away, might be giving that second place position back to Q21.
And Parceros across, they lost count of their burpees. They got the go sign with 20 seconds left. Hand is in the air for Moema. They're stopping to communicate in between each burpee. You cannot afford a no rep for Moema, but they also want to finish. And they will with 7 seconds. 4 finishers in heat number 3. I don't know how much it will impact the leaderboard because they finished in a similar order to where they stood, but they got the work done to maintain position heading into Sunday. Free shirts.
Team Samurai, who is on top of the leaderboard, moving from the thrusters to the burpees. Look at that first female athlete. I thought she was falling apart at the seams, giving way to Q21 on the right. But when they moved into the final set of burpees, she picked up the pace and pulled it together for her team. And that gave Team Samurai a much needed 100 points to finish off day number 2. What a way to bring it back together for that athlete.
Samurai team in 10:33, CrossFit Q21, and then CFP9 Rio gets in ahead of Colombia Parceros. That might hurt their case. Well, not might. It does hurt their case after they picked up some ground in our first event this morning, and then 4L moves into the top 5 with their job as well. Samurai team in the driver's seat, trying to make the leap to the CrossFit Games. Teffy is down there with Samurai.
Guys, first of all, congratulations. That was an amazing race. We were talking earlier, you were mentioning that thrusters were really so much fun for you. But you kept on going and you were also carrying your teammates with you. What was going through your head while you were doing it?
I think when we buy a worm in Buenos Aires, when we put the sand in the worm, it was like 240 kilos. And we can move it, and we say this will be very hard. So we make 2 times the worm with that, and it sucks too much.
It worked.
Here with the weight, it sucks again. But we think the last wall, the number 2, was the one that we can walk, and it doesn't happen. So it was a revenge for us.
Awesome. Thank you guys for the heat win.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Teffy. Santiago Scarafia doing the speaking there for Samurai team. I'm impressed they bought a worm.
Yeah.
That's the way to do it. Games.crossfit.com for all your results and more. Team Samurai is in the team driver's seat. We're going to flip the page, though. Individuals coming up. The worm is better than the barbell, though. So you got that going for you. Going to Sunday for teams. Samurai in front.